brackets, property value, squiggly bracket, property value, squiggly brackets. So you're already familiar with this. And you have to have the start style and the close style if you put it in the head. All I did was click a couple things and it changed the font and the page background color like that. I sorted that. You can see it even used the shorter version of the simple web colors, because the safest web color codes you can use are the 3-digit ones, and Dreamweaver will always use those. It'll still accept most of the 6-digit ones, but you can't always count on that. Okay, which is another reason you want to have browsers to preview it, which is one of the other things we're about to get to. Okay, so what we've seen here is a basic HTML page created, and in the page we had CSS just pop in there just by editing page properties. And just by highlighting text and using a keyboard shortcut, we had mat, align. But look at this in the properties inspector. Like, check it out. I can align it right there. Align center. I go into code view. Hang on a second. Where did it align the div? It's got to be in here somewhere. Refresh code. Oh, it's right there. Yeah, of course. Text align center. So it did it in the CSS, and this is what it will typically default to do if you don't actually choose another way to do it. We're going to get a lot more into this when we get in a site that's already made for us and start manipulating the CSS. I just wanted you guys to see that doing this in WYSIWYG, it's building all the code you've already learned how to do. And now is the time, before we bring in our first site, to quickly review the CSS hierarchy. So what you see here is inline, okay? That's an inline style. That's actually an inline HTML style. But you can also have, as we've learned, CSS inline around this text. You can have a span class or something like that. And we've discussed that. And that is the most powerful, because any other CSS that's floating around, that'll override it. Any CSS that's in here up in the head will override any connection made to an external sheet. Even though the way you start with CSS to do an entire site is typically with the external sheet. So really quickly, let's jump back to the web workshop. Okay, and here was our explanation from the web workshop. And this is the same as you'll get it from most websites or ehow.com. That was funny. I was just tilted on my chair. I almost wiped out. It's funny you guys have to listen to me for this long, but you never get to see me. I'm just cruising around in my office here. Back to the content here. An external CSS sheet will win over any browser built-in HTML. So when we learned CSS, after we spent those couple weeks on basic HTML, everybody was like, wow, this is great. You can just put all your formatting into one CSS file, make that connection to it in the head of the HTML file where you want that formatting to appear, and it'll override the stupid way that browser is making our H1 look. So let's say I wanted H1 in our CSS sheet. I told it with properties and values in the CSS code to be green and to be font size 20 and to be Verdana. Okay, that's what I put in there. And then on one of my sheets in my site, which it was like my contact page, I wanted to change the size of the heading slightly. So on that sheet, I took the code I had, in that HTML page, I took the H1 code I had in the sheet, I pasted it into the head with a start style and a stop style tag, and I changed the size in what I put in the embedded code. That will override this, okay? And then I wanted to go down to the very bottom, and I was still using H1, but I wanted this H1, instead of it to be green, I wanted it to be red, okay? So I put a CSS font color style in line right around the H1 just to make that one H1 red, and it overrode the green tag from up here, okay? So give me 1 second, I'm gonna type this. Here, let's just build this really quick, okay? So I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was in the properties inspector and I was on CSS. Okay, I wasn't on HTML. That's where you can pick all that stuff instead of going into here and doing it. And it switched me to there automatically when I initially did some CSS page property changes. Okay, before that I was just on my basic HTML stuff. You can do links here. You can apply a class that you have in CSS. We don't have any yet. You can do a basic H1 format. So let's highlight this and make it H1. Okay, format, heading 1. Okay, and then let's say I decided I wanted to change heading 1 so it wasn't, I don't like that font type at all. And I might change a couple other things too. So that's heading 1, HTML, that a browser is automatically going to get just like in the web workshop. I want to change heading 1, go here. This is some basic CS. I'm getting a little ahead of what I wanted to do in this lecture, but that's okay. let's add a new rule. So if we highlight that, okay, it won't actually make any difference because we're doing this in CSS. So highlighting it, not highlighting it, it doesn't matter, remember, because H1 is there and that's what's going to be affected. So if we go edit rule, it'll say, what do you want to do? Remember all this? We learned that you can have a class that'll apply to any one HTML element, okay? You can have a tag that redefines an element, an ID. Correct myself here. So the tag would be a redefinition of any HTML. That's the formatting stuff, and you can decide what you want strong to be in your CSS, just like we did with IDs, okay? I usually refer to all of them as tags, but ID, tag, whatever. These are the main tags, so this would be like H1, okay? And we could do this document only, all right? So we're going to redefine. By doing that, we know it's going to go in the head. If we did new style sheet, it would create a new sheet for us. We will get more into this later. I just want you to see the difference between the hierarchy and how Dreamweaver's making all this for us. So we click OK. Okay, now when we go, now see this? It's starting in H1 for us. Okay, when we go to H1, hang on, why did it throw a number sign in there? Hang on one second. Okay, I know, I wasn't gone at all as far as you guys were concerned, but I just sorted that out there. It was because I was highlighting something, and I also made another mistake, which I'm glad I caught myself on. So, okay, so we made an H1. We go over here. We've got H1. What did I do here now? Let me fix that really fast. Okay, good. So it's just an H1 and a close H1. We learned how to do that in the web workshop, right? Here's why Dreamweaver is so nice, because if you wanted to redefine that, you'd have to go in here and type H1 and do the squigglies and do all the properties and values and make sure you get your colon and your semicolon, because as soon as you miss one, it gets all screwed up. You can still be in design view and not highlighting anything, because you don't need it highlighted. It's just gonna make it right. And I think I mentioned the highlighting thing already. Here are the CSS rules you have so far for standard HTML tags. You go to new rule and you go edit rule. Now, class. Okay, we learned what class is. When you have a standard HTML element, standard HTML tag, a class can redefine just that tag if you add the class into the HTML like we did with the table class in the web workshop. We're not doing that right now. So a class can be used anywhere on any page and any site. If it's in a sheet, it can be used anywhere on the page if you put it in your head, but that's not what we're doing. ID is where you have like the divs, okay? I had to correct myself here, and I've been typing it out with you guys for 4 weeks, so I forget some of the terminology, even though I do this every day. An ID is where you make up the name. Typically, you don't want to use the standard name for an HTML element, and then it'll redefine whatever appears in the content of the HTML in the body with that name, as you learned in the 4th module of the web workshop when we did the containers page.